It is indeed an honor and privilege to be here, and I thank y'all so much for being here. And I welcome you here on behalf of our Mayor Steve Benjamin and members of Columbia City Council, our city manager, and all of our citizens and employees in the city of Columbia, because what you all do to make Columbia a great place cannot be understated. I first want to thank Kara for asking me to come today. We were talking, we were at another, both of us working in the fields, kind of doing some stuff with poverty, and she asked me, would you mind coming and speaking? And so I was pleased with the invitation, but I'm even more pleased because, you know, God just works things out, the way he pulls things together. And the topic that she gave me, I had something on my heart I wanted to share. But of course, with the events of this week, I think certainly her topic that she gave me 3-4 weeks ago is very timely and is definitely something that we need to be talking about. She asked me to come talk to you about the importance of advocating and serving in your local community. And when I bring that message and I talk to people about the importance of advocating and particularly serving and doing what we all can do, I always tell people, first of all, we all have talents and time that we can give. Not everybody has the ability to write, you know, $100 or $1,000 check to donate to their favorite charity, but everybody has some time, everybody has some talents that other people don't have, and you've got to figure out where you can pull all of those resources together to really invest in topics that we all care about, but things that make our community stronger and better. And when I think about the things that we have to really do in this community, it is amazing when you look at all the great things that are happening, but you also look at how much more work we have to do. In Columbia, we are facing a poverty rate of around 21%. And so we all know someone living in poverty. We all can be one paycheck away from losing our home or our resources. And so we all have to really look at our brothers and sisters who are struggling within our community. But in addition, you look at South Carolina, we still have one of the highest rates of domestic violence in the country. We always seem to go in between 1 and 5 nationally, and in the next month or so when the rankings come out again, I hate to say it, but I would bet you that we're probably in the top 3 again in domestic violence in the state. We're also looking at so many South Carolinians who are uninsured with our state deciding not to expand Medicaid. We have families who are struggling to provide medical resources for their families. We have children who can't get their needs met because they're not getting able to access medical care. We have health disparities in our minority communities. You all know that 29203 is the highest, has the highest rate of diabetic amputees in the nation, and that's right here within our community. When you look at health disparities as far as hypertension and obesity, South Carolina is always very high on those lists as well. We have a huge, and you don't need to go very far than just downtown to see, we have a huge homeless population, to include homeless families, which is not a lot of times the faces that we see when we think about the homeless in our community. But Richland School District 1 will tell you that they are probably the largest school district that has the most number of homeless children in the state of South Carolina. And so if you look at the issues that are happening right here in our community, there is not a lack of work for us to do. The question is, how do we do that work, and how do we work together collectively to really effect change in those areas? And then when I talk about the recent events, you know, we know over the last year we've had lots of talks and meetings about the number of African American males, particularly who are being shot and killed by law enforcement. And then after this weekend, you see the number of emboldened people who have ideologies that do not match with what this country is about. And I was just looking, and this one thing I heard this morning, so I wanted to pull it. They were doing doing something this morning to talk about the number of hate groups that have risen, and since 2016, the number of hate groups have risen in this country has risen by 17%. And the Southern Poverty Law Center says that we have at least 99 neo-Nazi groups, 130 Ku Klux Klan organizations, 43 neo-Confederate groups, 78 racist skinhead groups, and 100 white nationalist groups just within our country, and they're growing. And so when we think about all of those things, there are a lot of things that we have to do. And it's easy for people to hear those statistics and hear people talk about the negative stuff and feel like they just give up. They're like, what can I do? This is not something I can affect change. And so what I want to leave you with today is that we all have a place and a role, and we all can do something, and we all need to think about what that can be done. And so my call to action to you, and thinking about the topic that Kara gave me, is the importance of advocating and serving your community. And so I'm going to break that up into the advocacy part and the serving part. And I'm really going to talk about advocacy because most people think about advocacy as the folks who have the bullhorn. We're going to go to the leaders of this organization or this group, and those are going to be the people who advocate. But we all can be advocates for change in our community. And I was thinking about what advocacy is. And of course, in this day and age, we always go to Wikipedia and try and look for the new definition. But the definition for advocacy is the practical use of knowledge for purposes of social change. And so the knowledge that we have, the passion that we have for the things that are important to us and the places that we see change, we can advocate, we can use our knowledge and use our passion to advocate for social change within our community. So advocacy is really about motivating and mobilizing people. I mean, point blank, it's about motivating and mobilizing people. The people who sit home, not us sometimes, but we all know we've got friends. We might have family members who sit home and say, well, that doesn't affect me, or I can't really make a change, or me marching is not going to make a difference, or me voting is not going to make a difference. Have y'all ever heard people say that?
Yes.
And so we have got to motivate people like that and mobilize them, and we can really affect change. Thinking about, and I don't want to get too political, but of course thinking about last year's election, I know how many people woke up on that Wednesday morning and were stunned because they did not feel that there was no way that our national election would have turned out the way it did. But when you look at what happened just here in South Carolina, the number of folks who didn't vote, the number of folks who weren't even educated about the issues, the number of folks who refused to call their elected officials to say, don't repeal Obamacare, don't confirm this person in that seat, because you feel like, oh, it just doesn't matter. Well, I'm here to tell you that it does matter, but we've got to mobilize our voices and we've got to be motivated to really affect change. And so when I thought about the advocacy piece, I wanted to talk about how do we mobilize and how do we really advocate. And I broke it down. I'm not a minister, and Kara's heard me say this, but I always like 3 succinct points. So y'all might not always remember what I say. Y'all remember she said 3 things. So I'm going to give you 3 points that I think that really hits home the idea for advocacy. So first of all, advocacy is divided into 3 different activities. One is education. We have got to educate ourselves, our friends, our family, our community members about the issues in our community. There are so many people who do not know that our poverty rate is so high. There are so many people who do not know that we've got children who are living not just in poverty, but we have children who are living in cars and on the streets, and then they get up and they go to school, and then people wonder why they're not focused to learn. We've got to educate people about why domestic violence is an ill in our community that we all have to take a stand about. It's not just a family issue, but it's an issue that affects our entire community, and we've got to know about it. So we've got to educate ourselves about the issues that are important. It is so many times when I'm out and talking to people, particularly around election time, because that's a lot of where I spend information, and I'll talk to people about different candidates. And they have no idea who the candidates are and what they stand for. They're just voting for somebody because somebody told them to, or they like the person's name, or because the person's just been there forever. Not just that, people are not educated about, when you talk to people, really talk to people about what healthcare in this country is, what is Obamacare and why is it important for us, why our state should expand Medicaid. They don't know. They just know that, well, the Republicans say we need to repeal. or the Republican governor at that time said we're not going to expand Medicaid, and they didn't even look at who it was affecting. And a lot of people voted against their own interests because they didn't realize that those people that people were talking about was them. Mm-hmm. It's all of us. And so we've got to do a better job at educating, about the issues in our community and how can we really affect change so that people can make informed decisions about what is right and what is wrong, what they need to do, and how they can do it. The second area for advocacy is mobilization. And I talked about that before, how advocacy really is motivating and mobilizing people. But mobilization is really encouraging others to be public and get out there and do something. So whether it is an issue that is very near and dear to your heart, we have to mobilize people. And we can't just wait until something bad happens. You know, how many people wait till something bad happens, like the shootings in Charleston or what happened in Charlottesville, and now they want to do something? But when they were, on Facebook and they saw a friend make a post that seemed slightly racist or was offensive, they didn't say anything about it. And we've got to mobilize people to really do something, and whether that means going to voting, taking people to the polls, taking people to public forums, taking people to their city council meetings, their county council meetings, going to the State House. I mean, how many of y'all have ever been to the State House and see what happens up there? At least some of you. I'd say that I ask that question, and sometimes people have never been up there. They don't know what the people that we put in office do, and whether or not what they're doing is helping us or hurting us. And so we've got to mobilize people, and the way we do that is, again, educating them. But we need to figure out and tap into that passion, tap into how it affects them. How is it affecting our community? And so if we can mobilize people to speak with us, number one, we're not alone. Because a lot of times, and those of you in this room probably feel that way, a lot of times there's only a small group of us who are actually speaking out on an issue of importance that we know impacts so many more people. And so we won't be the only ones. We won't have that small group. We'll have more people with us, and the more people with us, the more people will pay attention, and the more people will really start doing something to affect change. And then my third thing, I think is probably the most important thing, is empowerment. We have to empower others to speak up and tell them that they have the right to be heard. There are so many people who wait for somebody else to speak for them. They think that I don't know enough about the issue, and then we can solve that by educating them on the issue. Or they think, well, nobody's going to listen to me. I don't have a title or a high-powered job, or I don't, have the money, or, I don't live in this area, and so who's going to listen to me? And I will tell you that people will listen, but we've got to have more people who feel empowered to make their voices heard. And as people feel more empowered to make their voices heard, those collective voices will be heard and will start affecting real change. And so before I close, I wanted to kind of break it down to, I talked about advocacy, but talking about the service in our local community. The work that the Columbia Bethlehem Center they do enormous work or tremendous work within our community, but they can't do it alone. People have to know about the Bethlehem Center and what they do and how people can be involved. In addition to the Bethlehem Center, there's lots of great work that's happening within our community. And so there's always a role that we can play. And I mentioned before, it's not always about writing a check. However, I will say, checks are good.
Yes.
Because you can't do the work without the money. And so, yes, cash is king. So checks are good. And I always tell people, it doesn't mean that you got to write a $100, $1,000 check. A $10, $15 check can go a long way to feeding a child, to giving a child glasses, to helping provide necessary resources for those who might be living on the street. Any amount helps. So cash is always good. So we want to give money, but there's always time and talent that we have to spend. And so whether you are a dynamic artist like Ms. James here that can lend your talent to an organization and speak and give a poem or sing or do something, or whether you have a talent of sewing and you might want to sew some things for those that are homeless, or a new organization that I'm working with, we are working to educate children about finances so that they can have the foundation to really make the wise choices. And so we have bankers and financial planners and other people who have that talent who can go into the schools and help talk to children about financial resources. So whatever your talent may be, that talent can be used within this local community to really affect some change. So all you have to do is figure out what that talent is and figure out the time that you have to spend. And it may not be a whole lot of hours, but I will tell you that the 5 or 10 hours that you have to spend working in one of our local organizations means a lot to those organizations and can go a long way to really affecting some change in our community. So before I close, I did want to, this is another thing I heard this morning. Yesterday, you all know that there was a memorial service in Charlottesville for Heather Heyer. And I'll tell you that I heard this morning her mom talking, and it was just so poignant. And I will tell you that, of course, her statement was about what happened in Charlottesville, but I'll tell you that all these things I've talked about within our community should outrage us. It should motivate us. We should have the passion to want to affect change in those areas. And so I'll leave you with the statement that she made. And she said, "So remember, in your heart, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And I want you to pay attention. Find what's wrong. Don't ignore it. Don't look the other way. Make a point to look at it and say to yourself, what can I do to make a difference?" And so I hope that we're all today asking ourselves, what can we do to make a difference? And whatever that thing is, then today, make that decision that you're going to go out and do it. Thank you very much. Thank you.